Welcome to Filipinos Live. This week we'll be doing a Premier League review of the 8 game weeks thus far. Okay, Sid, best player. Who do you think the signing of the summer was?
My signing of the summer has to be Dimitri Payet from West Ham. I mean, for 12 million to get a player who had 18 assists or 17 assists for Marseille last season and 12 goals. He's an absolute star for that team. He runs the show. He's been bossing big games. You saw him boss the Arsenal game, which was the first game of the season, and that was his first Premier League game ever. He also helped his team to a win at the Etihad against Man City, who everyone thought were going to be world champions, and who still think City probably will be champions. I think Payet is absolutely class. I'm surprised that a big team didn't go for him, and I think he'll really deliver the goods this season for West Ham.
Sale?
My signing of the season has to be Andre Ayew. To get Ayew on the free transfer was absolutely amazing, and for what he's done, I think 4 goals and an assist. I mean, he started right off the bat. From week 1, he was racking up points already in fantasy, and I think that game against Manchester United really showed what he's able to do. So for me, Andre Ayew has to be my signing of the window.
Okay, division.
My signing is someone that's above both of those signings. It's Johan Cabaye.
Mhm.
I think if you look at the table, you find Palace sitting in 4th spot. They've always had fantastic wide men, or since last season they really improved their attacking aspect of their game. But Cabaye really just bosses the game. He in that central midfield, he just controls the tempo. He releases his players. He sits in front of that back four. He makes these tackles. He just offers a creative aspect. And you just see the class and the composure that he brings. I think he's taken Palace to the next level. They're not a bottom mid-table club anymore. They're pushing towards those European spots, and I think that it's a platform from which Palace can build now, going into the next phase of their development.
Okay, I'm gonna put you guys a bit on the spot here. Worst signing of the summer.
I would have to go for Jordan Ayew. I'm sorry to steal it from my colleagues. I'm sure they also wanted him. I think he's the complete opposite to his brother.
Of course.
You guys can go ahead. I'll think of another one if that was.
No, Jordan Ayew is definitely up there, but I think Roberto Firmino. I don't think Liverpool needed him. 28 million was a lot to spend on someone who's on the bench at the moment. Someone like Coutinho, he's best in the number 10 role, and so is Coutinho. He was tried out wide, that's not where he's best. In the Copa, he showed that, a lot of people thought he was a flop of the tournament, and he showed that out wide is not where he's best at. From last season, we see he's best in the number 10 role, and that's Coutinho's role at Liverpool. So for 28 million, I gotta say that Firmino was the flop of the transfer window.
I honestly can't think of signing that's worse than Jordan Ayew. I'm sorry. I think Firmino is just a case of a good player that's just not a good signing.
And he fetched quite a high price as well.
So even though he's a good player, I think he'd have been fantastic for a Spanish side like Atletico Madrid. But the Liverpool tempo, the game, I think Coutinho already offers most of what Firmino offers anyway. So they paid a lot for a player that isn't a major upgrade over any of their stars.
Yeah,
So
I think another contender would be Falcao to Chelsea, which was really a nothing buy.
Yeah, that's another.
I mean, if you have
terrible.
Costa, who had a fantastic first season,
And Remy.
and Remy
yeah.
as his backup, I saw no need for Falcao signing.
Yeah, while we're on that, Chelsea Football Club, the demise of them. What do you guys think of that? Do you think Mourinho is to blame or the players?
I think it's a combination of the two. So it's almost a post-championship mindset. So Chelsea were really comfortable last season, almost cruised through the championship. Everyone knew that they were going to be champions by the halfway point. They looked almost unstoppable, and you can tell that there was a big difference between their first half and second half performances. Like Fabregas was racking up assists like nobody's ever seen before, but in the second half he somewhat diminished, and it was more a pragmatic approach, trying to get the wins as best they could. And so I think they've kind of come into this season a bit lackluster, a bit lackadaisical from last season, and they've really underwhelmed.
I think Chelsea's. I wouldn't call it a demise just yet because we're still early in the season. There's still a possibility of a turnaround. But Chelsea's dip in form, I think it's a combination of many factors. I think Mourinho is to blame to an extent. he hasn't made the changes that are necessary. For example, his reluctance to drop Ivanovic. I think Ivanovic has been one of the worst players this season. I think there's a few goals where he was directly responsible for them, and Mourinho just refused to drop him. I mean, you've got Baba Rahman on the bench. Azpilicueta he favors his right foot. He's best on the right. On the other hand, Mourinho as well. For some of the other changes that he's made, he's tried rotating his team. I think in the Champions League he dropped Hazard as well, which really surprised me. And even Matic, I think, recently has been dropped as well. So some of the changes Mourinho's been making, I think it's just hit and hope at the moment. So until they really find exactly what they want and kind of work their teams in a stabilized manner to know your best team and play your best team and try and get the results. I think that's what's needed, and I think the game against Aston Villa can be a step in the right direction if they approach the game right.
Okay.
I just think sometimes that like a fear factor aids the side. Like Chelsea were one of those teams that when they were feared, they played much better. I think that especially the beginning of the season in which Swansea took points off Chelsea and that whole horrendous start. I think teams suddenly went to the mindset that they could grab something from the Chelsea game, and they started putting Ivanovic under pressure, and they started putting Matic under pressure, and Fabregas wasn't doing a good enough job in front of the back four. I think sometimes players also punch above their weight in the quest for a title. I think when Vidic and Ferdinand defied the clock and United ended up winning the league, I think that was pretty much the case with probably Terry and Ivanovic, and I think now that the incentive is sort of gone, they've already won the league. I think they've reverted back to the mean per se, and Chelsea look very mortal. I think they'll come back. I'm not sure I certainly think the title might be a step too far, but I think they can certainly make top four. But they need to work on that defense.
I think another problem was the disappearance of Hazard this season. I don't think he's pitched up yet.
Yeah.
And he's generally a slow starter. But he should be grabbing at least 15 goals a season, and I think he's only on one or so. Or two, sorry. So, I think we'll...
Yeah, and in the game for Belgium, I mean, he was man of the match as well, and he showed that he is class. It's just a matter of time before he starts kicking in again.
But I think with Chelsea, there's also over-reliance on a few players to contribute goals. I know Williams got a few free kicks, but if Hazard doesn't score and if Costa doesn't score, then if you look at that team, Fabregas does chip in with a few. Matic has scored, but that's not his natural game. Whereas you look at City and goals can come from
Anywhere.
Yeah. And then with Chelsea, I think that's been a real problem. There's some of their offensive plays a bit predictable. You look at the guys; they're always looking at Hazard and Costa to really step up.
And I think Fabregas is completely wasted deep in
Yeah.
midfield.
Yeah.
I mean, last season maybe because he was an unknown quantity in the Premier League, playing those long balls to Costa and him putting them away. That's not really an asset anymore.
Yeah.
I think if you played him in a number 10 or more forward position, he'd be more effective.
Or even a three-man midfield, maybe 4-3-3 in the most advanced of the three. But at the moment, they just don't have the right balance.
Yeah, at the moment as well, I don't think Chelsea have another central midfielder that's a title-winning midfielder. I mean, you've got Ramirez in there, but he's not exactly the guy you want to rely on to win a title.
I think someone like Witsel should come in and
there's
a massive.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so thanks for that. Okay, so we got a current top four: City, Arsenal, United, and Crystal Palace. Do you guys expect it to remain that way? Of course, Chelsea should be up there along with Spurs,
I
Liverpool.
expect Chelsea, but don't be surprised if Liverpool somehow manage. I'm really excited about Jurgen Klopp. I think he's an unknown prospect. I think he's going to bring a really exciting brand of football to Liverpool, and I think he's going to really suit them. And if he makes some transfers in January, then we could be looking at a very interesting top four run.
Yeah, I think City, United, and Arsenal will finish in the top four. Crystal Palace, they've surprised many by the start to the season, but I don't think they'll be able to sustain the start. As mentioned, Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, that could be a huge factor propelling Liverpool into the top four. Chelsea as well. As I said, it's a dip in form. I wouldn't call it the demise just yet. And there's a lot of other teams as well. Everton, Spurs, you always find them knocking on the European door. They somehow, they're always fighting for top four. They usually end up in the Europa League. But they're much more competitive this season. The league is much more wide open. I mean, you've got teams like West Ham, Crystal Palace doing really well. Even West Brom, I think they went a few games without conceding a goal as well, which surprised me.
So I think those three teams, like Cyril said, are heavy favourites for the top four position. The fourth spot's interesting. I think it could be Liverpool. Every time you look at the Spurs side and you think they just need one more player or two more players, I think if they had a dominating central midfielder alongside Dele Alli.
I
They
think
could,
someone along the lines of Krikoviak from
yeah,
Sevilla.
Krakowiak is. Oh, I really like him. So I think Spurs in January, if they can get there in and around that top 4 spot and make a smart signing, but we've been saying that for a while now.
Yeah.
So I think Liverpool or Chelsea, it'll be really interesting. Before Klopp came, I still backed Mourinho's men, but now I'm not so sure. I think it could be interesting.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, guys. Okay, relegation. Okay, so at the moment it's Aston Villa, Sunderland, and Newcastle. With Sam Allardyce coming in to take over at Sunderland, do you guys expect any changes?
I do expect not an immediate change, but I think Big Sam really knows the league. He knows how to finish in and around mid-table, and I think he'll do that with Sunderland. Before this, it looked like a hopeless case, but I think he just has the knack and he has that experience to show the players how to stay in the league. A team that I think will drop into the bottom 3 is Bournemouth. That's just because they've lost Callum Wilson. I think he might be out for the rest of the season, if I'm not mistaken, because he had a horrendous injury. They've also lost their biggest signing, Tyrone Mings, which was a big loss to them. So Matt Ritchie can't hold it on his own, unfortunately. And I think they might fall short.
Along with Newcastle and Aston Villa.
Along with Newcastle, and I think Aston Villa might bounce back, but then it might be one of the promoted sides to drop down.
Yeah, so I don't think Aston Villa will be relegated. Big Sam, as we said, he knows the league, but I don't think Sunderland have the manpower to survive the Premier League. Unless there's a huge injection of funds in January and they make some major transfers, I don't see the Sunderland players actually coping with the rest of the league. I see Sunderland dropping. At the beginning of the season, I predicted Norwich as my first choice for relegation, but they've somewhat surprised me with their knack of finding the net. So I've changed my opinion unless there's some major injuries there. Bournemouth, as Seth mentioned, with the injuries, they actually started off well. I thought for a second that they could finish in the top half of the table, but that was just for a second. That I don't sustain that thought anymore.
Yeah, I think the bottom 3 is very difficult to predict. I must say I can't see Sunderland staying up unless they make a ridiculous signing in January. Even then, there's very little time for that player to adapt to the league, and I think to stay up you need a striker that can guarantee you goals. And I think with Odion Igalo, I think Watford are safe.
He just has a knack of finding the back of the net.
Yeah, and even their defense is somewhat stubborn.
Yeah, and they've got some midfielders that are really dodgy. I think that Bournemouth, they could be in trouble. It was really cruel to lose Callum Wilson after Tyrone Mings, but it's very difficult. I think Aston Villa really
not to
spent
mention
poorly.
they've also lost Max Gradle for the season.
Yeah, Max Gradle.
So
also
I mean,
good.
the 3 biggest players, arguably in that team, are out.
So it was really cruel. Aston Villa has spent poorly. I hope they survive relegation because there's a lot of promise there, but I think they could be roped in.
I actually don't know because if Aston Villa get relegated, it opens up the door for a player like Jordan Amavi to move to a bigger team, and I think he deserves that.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, last question, just to conclude. I'd like to know from each of you your champions for the season, top goal scorer, and player of the season. You can start.
I'm going to go with a bit of a surprise here. I think Manchester United, not just because I'm a fan, but just because I think a lot of people are saying United overspent and spent poorly this window, but I think Schweinsteiger was a very astute signing. I think he's galvanized the team. And I think he just has that factor that might push them through. City, their players get injured all the time. You see Aguero's out. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. Silva's out often. Company as well is usually in the back room. So City are a bit unknown there. Everyone expects them to win, but I'm going to go with the United winning the league this season.
Okay, so this might come as somewhat of a surprise because I'm usually someone who takes a lot of risk, and you guys know that. But I'm going to go for the safe option here because I think it's more likely. I'm going to say Manchester City to win the league. I don't see any team that can throw them out of that race. Top goal scorer, I'm going to say Sergio Aguero. Even though he's injured at the moment, when he's fit, he's the best striker in the league by quite some distance. I think he's going to hit 20 plus goals this season. So he's my choice for top goal scorer and player of the season. Yeah, and was there another question?
No.
Yeah, I just think City. United are just lacking in a few areas for me. I think it's a year too soon, or maybe 2 years too soon. I think City have the greatest squad depth. I think they have different formations and different players at their disposal. In terms of the best player in the league, I think Silva really impressed me this far, and I think if he can stay fit for 30 out of those 38 games or even close, then he'll be the best player in the league. I think Aguero will end up with the most goals if he is fit. I think Anthony Martial will hit the ground running, and yeah, I'm excited to see how he goes. But
In terms of my top goal scorer, I think Daniel Sturridge stands a bit of a shout, just because he'll be the main man at Liverpool. And in terms of the league's best player, I'd have to go with Eden Hazard again. I think he's going to have a bit of a turnaround, and he'll show everyone what he's made of.
That's interesting. Interesting that you guys never mentioned Arsenal. Sanchez, guys.
I think I'm still sore from the United loss to Arsenal.
No, I think Alexis Sanchez is a fantastic footballer. I'm actually disappointed that Liverpool missed out on him a few years ago. Yeah, as I said, I don't see any footballer better than Sergio Aguero in the league when he's fit. If he's injured for 20 of the 38 games, then it's hard luck to Man City. But I still think they'll win the title. But if he remains fit for most of the season, I don't see any other footballer taking away the golden boot from him. And
you've said that Aguero is probably the best player in the league, but let's have a look at the difference when Silva plays and when Aguero plays, and let's look at
definitely. I agree with that 100%. I said that after the last game. Watching the game, Silva made such a big difference to the game. He's an incredibly important player to Manchester City, and prior to Kevin De Bruyne being signed for Manchester City, he was the creative hub of the team that created a lot of the goals that Aguero scored.